afternoon, everyone. Hopefully, you guys can all hear me. You guys can give me a shout in chat there, Anthony or Bernard. That'd be awesome. Let me get rid of that. Cool. Yeah. So in the studio today, pretty impromptu. Well, not impromptu. I plan to do it, but it won't be lots of bells and whistles because it's the down and dirty stuff here in the studio. So again, working on the Nevarro project, hosting away here. Painted minis all the way, unpainted minis second tier. I'm not painting any minis, but I will show you some things that I have been painting. So hopefully that works for you. So let's just jump in and do a little bit of preamble. I want to awesome, Anthony, appreciate that. Just to give you guys a sort of a long backstory in a pictorial form of how we've come to be here. So if you have not been a patron or you haven't been following the project or following with the content, Tuesday cast, Friday cast, whatever, I'll kind of give you a roundabout way of how we got here. It's cool looking back at some of the photos just to kind of think of where we started here, where I started a while ago on this, but it's nearing, I guess, conclusion or getting there. I feel like I could tinker at this for a while, so I'll probably be in that stage of like nearly complete for like 6 months. But just as I add things to the wall, so and the wall's pretty bland in terms of extra bits, but that's what I'm working on right now and kind of mixing them and fitting them into the look, and then I'll change the look of the wall itself as I dirty it up and add more features. So if you're just joining for the first time and you have no idea who I am, Sean Morris, I run the Terrain Studio. I build a series of different terrain elements, wargaming terrain primarily, but building for companies, building for private, citizens, if you will, folks that are hobby collectors. I also play a lot of Star Wars Legion, build for Legion, podcast for Legion. And generally do a lot of how-tos and tutorials, and so that is where you are. And if you just stumble across this later, that is what it is. So what we're going to be doing is doing a little bit of intro, as I said, walk you through the project. We'll get to the table. We'll talk a little bit about all the various elements and what stages they're in and what's upcoming and what I need to do for what have you to get them ready for the wall. And then I'll probably just tinker away. I got to do some base coats on some things. I'll kind of walk you through some ideas that I have. I got some stuff in raw form, base form, ready for the next layer of paint form, some things that are completed. So I'll kind of walk you through in that time that we have there. So so obviously this was the Nevarro project, and it was basically inspired by the Mandalorian series. I was looking for another backdrop for the studio. Obviously, I have the Death Star one here. This is all again handcrafted by foam. And foam is my primary medium I like to work in, at least for big builds like this, the 1-to-1 scale stuff. So what we have here's some inspirational photos just from the series. These are not my photos. Full credit to Lucasfilm. But as you can see, the scene here, the streets of Nevarro, and kind of capturing some backdrops. So what I wanted to do was kind of incorporate the top photo here, basically from the left side of the door over to about the right side of the elongated window. Now I made some allowances based on space, shortening the window a little bit because it kind of was a little bit lengthy. Obviously every bullet hole doesn't match, but the idea was to sort of capture and emulate that look of that scene. Then the bottom photo here, this is just an additional photo giving me some additional reference photos for some of the wall accoutrements that they have in the streets of Nevarro. The more you look at this, there actually is, like, I think they reversed a bunch of scenes because some of the elements are actually on left side in one, right side in the other. So it doesn't matter about that. Hey, James, how's it going? I basically just grabbed a bunch of elements and then tried to make and replicate the look as close as possible. So doing this out of foam versus whatever they built this out of is challenging, and that's part of the process. But I'll walk you through kind of how we came to get there. So where did it all start? Well, it started here, humbly, with this stack of foam. So you can see here we I used a lot of a 1/2 inch foam and 1 inch foam, some 1.5 inch as well. There's just some base coat paint and some primer. So this is where everything that you're going to see started like this on a cart at Home Depot in 8x2 sheets of foam. No tricks, no magic. Everything is hand cut, handmade here. So once we got that all loaded into the old SUV, and by the way, this Patreon sponsors the whole project, so everything that that we generate from there, I generate from there, ends up back into these kind of builds. So it's a kind of a reciprocal. So I do appreciate that, and then obviously you get some content on the backside, and we get some fun stuff to look at later. So after that, what I did was started basically mocking this up on the wall. Now I make this entire thing removable, and that is one of the both unique and challenging pieces of it. Um, so the entire wall goes up, but it's also made to come down, and that way I can pull it up and put it down to work on it, to paint it, and if I want to move it, remove it, or move it, I can do all of that. So basically, the irony of this is that I took a concrete wall that was insulated, and I added insulation to make it look like concrete. So that's kind of the running joke that I have in my head about some of the steps that I went through here in the studio. So I started off by laying the very flat wall. That gives me basically a smooth surface to work from. Then I started cutting out the window shape because that's the largest indexing point short of the wall, short of the door, I should say. So once those elements were laid out, a lot of measurement, as you can well imagine, then I got started just adding a few of the other pieces. Now, if you look at the left side of the photo here, I have a roughed in bathroom here, but it's only my wife and I and our 3-year-old, and we already have 2 bathrooms. And so we don't need a third right now because I just don't feel like we all need our private bathroom. So I've commandeered this place as my filming area, part of my filming area. The other side of the house is entirely art studio. So because this pipe was here and it's kind of in the middle of nowhere, I decided to, if I go back to the reference photo here real quick, let me just close these down and open up this one. Right in the corner to the right side of the door, there's this little jutty that sort of steps in, and there's actually a pipe in one of the reference photos that I found. So I thought I would work that in to the look. So let me go back here for a second. So I decided to incorporate that into the look. So that will ultimately end up being part of the design. You can see here I put the trim piece along the window and then above the window and then around the window as well. And what I'm doing is I'm just using the negative space of the wall. So the wall is actually that painted black portion. So that's the physical wall. And then the foam all steps out from there. And as a result, I'm able to kind of get that in-depth or indented look to sort of create the rest. Now, some may ask, why don't you just paint the wall? And the reason being is the bullet holes and adding depth in those. So I needed to have a little bit of depth to work with, but I only added 1/2-inch foam because I just didn't want to insulate the wall with 1-inch foam. It's just unnecessary. I didn't need them that deep. So I went ahead and put 1/2-inch foam on the wall, and then everything else is kind of 1.5 or inch thick just to give me that stepped out look. Next photo here, this is a sort of a profile photo here of where the door, so the door actually bulks out about 5 inches from the wall, and I wanted to create a door frame. The reason being is I wanted to have the door recessed on a flat wall, and I wanted to add a little bit of a unique dimension, and that piece right there that you see bulked out, that is actually hiding the pipe that you saw in the previous photo, and that was part of the reason that I wanted to have that bulk out happen right there. It both protects and hides the pipe from a certain angle, as well as just sort of insulates it so nobody runs into that sort of pipe that's floating near the wall. And you can kind of see in profile running all the way to the wall there. And you can see a little bit of the depth that's achieved in the window. So then next up, what I had to do is I had to create the door. So here, Bernard, example of painting, and all the painting techniques are super fast and easy. Maybe not fast. They're not long steps, but they're really sort of crude. I use a lot of like foam, cloths, a lot of stippling, not some airbrushing, of course, here and there on the small pieces. But I really try to do the quick and dirty stuff because the quicker that you go, the more random and unique the look. So this door again is entirely cut out of foam. It's just a 1/2-inch sheet. Well, it's 2 1/2-inch sheets laminated together because it's a little wider than 2 feet. It's actually a full door size. And then I cut all the designs. And what I did with the designs was I just took some Bristol board, basically poster board, and I just created this sort of unique embellishment here. And then all I did was just flip and mirror it. And I did one at the top, one at the bottom, and then I just did a little bit in the middle to match it up and to give the top and bottom a little bit of a unique look. I sort of changed the bottom versus the top triangles there. So again, just making a stencil, flipping it, flipping it, flipping it. Thanks for the thumbs up. I appreciate that. And then I just ended up putting that on there. I painted it out with sort of a black to start, and then I went with a sort of gradually upped it to a red. And then I just did a wash over it and then stippled it with a car wash sponge to give it that really sort of a hammered look. It'll have some more details. This is just, with the crude base image here. So yeah, so that basically got the door finished. And like I said, everything's 1-to-1 scale, so it's a full-size door. And small inside joke here in the studio, my daughter is very, very much afraid of this door. She believes a monster lives behind it. So after that, these are a bunch of random photos in here. This just shows you an example of the bullet holes and sort of the damage. So this is actually in the window frame. So here's the 1/2 inch foam on the backside, and then there's a 1-inch trim piece that runs around. I did a tutorial on the Patreon about how to go about doing this. I'll just give you a hint. I used pliers to do all that, and I really smashed and wore away at the wall. And you'll notice that the bullet holes, if I want to have them deeply recessed, I go all the way through the 1/2 inch foam that is the base layer, and then I just ended up painting that out black. You'll see that in another image to give it that bullet hole look. So again, I have a tutorial on that, just kind of how to make quick and easy bullet holes, or even just damage foam so that it looks a little bit more realistic. Now, while that doesn't look most realistic, I think as we move through the images, we'll start to give you a little bit better perspective. There's an example of the door actually recessed in. Yes, every one of those rectangular pieces on both sides of the door was cut and glued in individually, as well as the square. So it's a rectangle and a square. I don't know how many there are, but it runs the length of the door, and the door is over 6 feet high. Again, I did a little tutorial on the cutting and the painting of that, but you can see the door here and how the recessed look really gives and plays with the shadows quite nicely. So none of these images are photoshopped or anything like that. They're just basically taken with my iPhone. Um, as I'm working, and so whatever light is there and whatever cool shot I can get, that's kind of what you achieve. So you can see the recessed look and kind of what that looks like, and I was really happy with how that came out. So it's a fun little thing there. So moving along, that is an example of the bullet hole there painted out. They're not fully finished. There will be some gray tones added in there, but these were just airbrushed out using a thinned down airbrush paint, just using black. Vallejo is my go-to for airbrush paints. So again, just getting the dark recesses, really blacking that out. In addition, not to reference all the tutorials, but this is on the Patreon, so this is kind of what I do. There is a tutorial on how I went about doing the bullet holes from the pliered look, and then inside I actually went ahead and added a ballast and a mix of glue, and that actually creates the sort of crumbled look for the bullet holes. And so there's actually debris, made it look like crumbling concrete, shot concrete. And then I just ended up blacking them out with the airbrush and give it a little bit of a feathered look there, so you get kind of that sooty burn look around the outside. Question coming in, David asking, for the door from the black to the red, did you spray paint or airbrush? No, let me go back because I love questions always. Let me jump back here. No, so there's not absolutely no airbrushing and no paintbrush work on this door itself. I foam brushed out the door to start, the black, so just a basic foam brush that just gave me the first coverage. And then after that, what I did, David, was I took a car wash sponge, and I just gradually changed the black to red, and I just ended up stippling over the door. So what I did was did the black look, then I stippled over the entire door using the sponge, and I used a large sponge so that it wasn't able to get really tight to the design. And so that ended up keeping the black in the recesses. So after I did that, then what I did was black washed the door, and I literally took some black paint, washed over, and then cloth washed the whole door so that I could push it into the recesses and sop it up out of the blank spaces. And then I just repetitively added the stippling effect, gradually getting a little bit more red and gradually reducing the amount of paint that I put on. And then obviously the last one focusing just on the raised areas of that. So if I jump back one more image, and I'll close these down. Let me grab the door one. There you go. You can kind of see in the top portion the little bit more red in the flats, and then you'll just see that there's a bit more of a highlight towards the raised pieces. So that's how I went about doing that. So, but no airbrushing, no paint brushing. So I just find I can do some these large pieces way quicker when I get into the wall. I'll talk a little bit more about that again. No airbrushing, no painting. So yeah, no, you bet, I'm all about that. So given you can get all the secrets, so which there are none. It's just work. All right, let me just get rid of those. Let me open up. We did that one. Okay, cool. So just talking a little bit about some of the fine details and kind of how I get a little bit of allowances in here. So you can see this, and there's two different wall decorations next to the door. So it is what it is. You can see here this sort of, I don't know, almost shoulder pad like. I don't know if it's a light sensor, what it is, next to the door, but it has a really unique shape. And so when I looked at this, I kind of, okay, it's an elongated shape. It's sort of a spoon-like in appearance, so it's very convex shape, but it has some, hey Striker, but it has some sort of rigid lines. So one of the tutorials that I did was just working on creating the shape, and on that particular one, I just built this piece. So no painting, no nothing like that. I just went in and sort of walked through the design. And so what I came up with, and this is the example. So I don't have a lot of detail here. So, and this is a lot of the references. I'm zooming in on zoomed in images. And so what I look at when I'm doing that is I get as close as I can to the shape. And then I just start adding some, inspiration or imagination. So you can see here, this is another prime example. There's these three wall pieces at the top left-hand corner. There's one here on the right, which in some images is actually reversed. So if I go back to the first one, it's actually on the left-hand side. That one I actually built last night, and I'm going to talk a little bit about it because I don't have enough room to put this in reference to these other three. And so I had to just cut it in half, and so I'll show you what I did there. But you can see this one is kind of unique. It's like open at the bottom, sort of beveled, then it's squared off. It's got sort of angled edges. These other three pieces here are really super rusted out. Looks like they have a couple vents on there. There's obviously these circular pieces, these cords coming out, two circles towards the top, one towards the bottom. Looks like there's some sort of blocky piece on the other side. The glass you can see here, the window, some of the frames busted out. All those little details I've tried to incorporate into the pieces. So there is how I've done the light cover there. So I just took the design, took that beveled edge. There's a little bit of a sort of a parallelogram, if you will, at the top. It's roughly that shape. It's got this real shine to it. So the unique piece about what I like about this is the shine that you see right here with this sort of blackened top and bottom. That's actually painted. So that's actually not a light trick. That's actually painted to look like that. And the reason that I wanted it like that was no matter what sort of light was hitting it here in the studio, I would always be able to kind of replicate that look, that it's getting a bit of shine from the right side. So that's actually airbrush there. So David, that's an example of using a bit of an airbrush, but again, achieved the same way, that foam brush, that wash, that cloth wash, and then just using a little bit of airbrush to darken the top and lighten the right side. So that is on there. That is a straight on shot. So again, that's showing you the airbrushed look there. And you can tell because the wall is lit up the same, but the actual piece is darkened with that right side light hitting it there. So that is another example of a piece I've done. Here's the window shape here, and the reason that I have this one here, these lines at the bottom are kind of indicating the flat portions where glass will be added. So my good buddy Aaron at Back to Basics, he's actually helping me out, and we're cutting some smoky acrylic. And it's actually going to fill the window or serve the purpose of the glass. And so we're going to do the glass in here as well. And then we're going to do some Friday Night Fights Airbrush lettering in acrylic as well across this. So again, this serves as the backdrop for our live stream gaming, but it also serves as a project for building. So there's dual purposes here, and I just wanted to fill the window and not have that large void space. So I'm not sure if I have an image of that. There we go. So that is just a mocked up image there that we're going to use some glass to go through Friday Night Fights across there, obviously, and the colors of the gray and the red. Some of them are going to be inlaid into the glass shards, and then others are just going to be kind of free floating. So that will be roughly what the final result will look like. So that's just a mock-up that I did there. This is the piece that I'm going to be talking a little bit about today, and actually going to be doing some of the silver base coat on this. This is actually the rack. So if you go way back to the first image, let me just grab these images and bring them up roughly where we are right now. There we go. So you can see that rack above the door. I wanted to add that in, even though most of these wall accoutrements are going to be very high on the wall. I wanted to still give it the look so that I could get some atmospheric shots of the wall. So a lot of pieces went into building that frame, got it looking okay. I actually added these little additions at the top. It didn't shoot out like that, but I thought it looked a little bit nicer. And I felt like artistically I wanted to add that, but this is just all built out of 1.5-inch foam. This is in the taped form here. It's obviously glued now, and it's actually blackened out now. But this is going to fit up onto the wall itself. And where I mentioned that everything is removable, all the wall adornments are generally removable as well. Some of the smaller elements will be glued directly to the panels, but some of the larger stuff like this will actually be a 3M command stripped, and that's basically my go-to for securing everything. It just lets me put it on, take it off, and I can reference things quite nicely as I work by myself. This piece is rather large, as you'll see, so it's kind of difficult to hold it up on the wall and see it at the same time. So what else do we have? That is just an upward shot of where the rack is going to fit. So that is it, again, taped form, but now it is blackened out, and that is where it sits, right above the door. Another shot of the door, and then you can see that that wall light, or whatever you want to call it, is there. This is a fun little thing here. I'll talk a little bit about this as well. I already showed you these were the wall panels. The top reference, the top photo is the reference from the wall itself. So that is as zoomed in as I could get. And so what I did is attempt to replicate whatever it is I could pick out of that image as best I could here in the foam form. So quite a few pieces for these. I did a little video on this as well. And I'll pop that up on the Patreon as well. This is just the next form there. So moving from the reference photo to the build form, from the build form to the finished painted form. I did those yesterday. I am going to do a small tutorial on that as well. I was going to do these particular pieces, but again, I worked really quickly through the process. So I'm going to use this. I'm going to replicate this exact look and technique on a couple of the smaller pieces that you're going to see on the table here in a few minutes. So that's kind of the finished look. I think I have one more shot of that, a little larger scale. So there you go. So this again is just a black base coat, silver, then it's airbrushed with a steel. Then after the steel, I use a little bit of aluminum, airbrush the aluminum on, and then it's just a series of washes, pigments, and it's put on, take off real quick, on, off, on, off. There's some stippling that's in there with a dark panzer gray, some black, and then some rust, and then rust streaks, and then streaking grime. So there's about 7 things on there. It's really quick. It took me about 45 minutes start to finish after the base coat. So quick and easy. I like the looks of these. Again, you saw them on the wall. They're supposed to be really grungy. And that's kind of the look I was going for. These are not powered, although a cord does plug in there. So, because ironically, the best example of this cord that I could possibly think of, it looks like a plug-in. So I just went and bought 2 extension cords, plug them straight into the foam, which is great. Nice pressure fit in there. And then I will paint that, black that out, and run that into the ceiling. As you can see, when I show you the wall, it just runs into the ceiling very close to the top of the design. And then last but not least, that is kind of where we are today. That looks very familiar for what I have set up here. So I'm going to talk a little bit about these vents. There's that piece I worked on last night. Talk about the Proxxon Cutter there. You can see those wall pieces are added to the wall right at the very top of the design. And as a result, the other piece is going to go sort of in the middle and be half hidden. I have some vents to go on the bottom that aren't in the picture, but they're going to serve as wall covers, very large wall covers. But I wanted to add some vents down low because it's kind of bland down there. There will be a TheTerrainStudio logo, very lightly watermarked, airbrushed into the design as well. Just as a fun little thing to do. Again, I want to have this as a piece that I'm really proud of, so I might as well put my stamp on it. And as you can see, it serves the backdrop for filming our games that we film here each and every week. So that concludes the show and tell of everything that I can possibly think of here. My bad, my phone is pinging here. Let me just turn that off. Oh, there we go. All right, let me just go back and hide all these images. If you have any questions, now's a great time to do that. I will just kind of walk you guys through the images, and then I'm going to move over to the table. And hopefully the microphone over there picks up enough of what's going on, and then I'm just gonna just hobby for the next hour and a half here. So forgive the preamble there, but it's a great tool to use to catch everyone up if you haven't been here, if you have no idea who this is or what I'm about. So yeah, so I'll pause for a few minutes on that. Let me jump over to here. Hopefully you guys can hear me as well. So that's a kind of a live shot, hopefully live, of the studio itself. I'll just make sure it's live. I'm going to throw something across the screen here. Oh, that didn't make it. Let me try this. Yep, perfect. I saw it. All right, we are live. And next shot here, this will be probably where I'll work most of the time, but if you guys want me to show you something else, I can jump back and walk you through that. So I'll just be standing underneath there. I'm going to do a microphone test here in a minute, just so that you guys can hear me at the table. And then if you need I can always just jump to this scene here. You can kind of get a full sense of what's going on. Right, let me jump back here. There's a question totally off topic. Any suggestions on vined ivy going up to cracks of a mortar or suggestions of product? What scale are we talking about? Are we talking about like mini scale, like 15, 28 mil, 32 mil, or are we talking like physical, like 1-to-1 scale vines for like a large scale build? I will pause for that. So any other questions is great time. You guys can fire them and I can do rapid fire here before I jump to the table. While I'm waiting for mini scale. Okay, cool. Of Legion Trade. Yeah, well, there is just a ton of good products. So making your own vines rather difficult. Looking for good vines, you can definitely find them. I will highly recommend a couple companies for sure. If you haven't looked at Gamers Grass stuff, go look at Gamers Grass because they have so many cool, unique plant-like items from tufts to vegetation to shrubs to unique basing items. Go check them out. Another company that makes really good, vines is Silphor. It's Silphor or Miniatura, I think is the parent brand of that. If you're looking for a company that sells that and can't find that specifically, because generally I don't buy it direct from them, you can go to it's stateside. It's a it's a company called Scenic Express. Apologies in advance if you get in there and spend money because it's literally the terrain makers warehouse website. I love going there. So go check out Scenic Express. They sell a plethora of companies all under one sort of website. So you can get Knock and Hecky and Silphor and Woodland Scenics all sold under one brand, one overall brand website. So go check that out. But yeah, Silphor makes a really unique English ivy that you probably would really like. Another item you can get Woodland Scenics flowers. And if you look at their flowers, if you cut off the actual color, the underwire mesh that they use is a really unique vine, so you can tease that out and use that as well. But start with those places. If you still got further questions, David, come back and see me or send me a message for sure. But go check that out. And my apologies, like I said, on your wallet for going over to Scenic Express. So good website. Okay, I'm going to just run to the table real quick and then run back here. I just want to make sure that you guys can hear me wired over there. All right, I can read your comments from here, so I'm going to just sit tight in this space, but if I am working and it's roughly this loud, I just want to know if that is too loud, if you guys can hear me. If I'm speaking down to the table, are you able to still pick up what's happening? So that'll be good. Once that's good to go, I will jump over here and continue the broadcast from here. So Yeah, and you're welcome, David. No problem. Can you find it's good sound levels? Awesome. That is amazing. All right. Well, what I'll do is I'm just gonna go mute my my headset and my microphone. Come back over here. Thank you, Anthony. And then we'll get going over here. Okay, so what do we got? 35? All right, perfect. I'll do another hour over here, or hour and a bit. So what I have going on at the table here is just a whole mess of different things. So one of the really great tools, something I like a lot, is my Proxxon Cutter. I use it. This is my third Proxxon Cutter, by the way, because I've actually wore out 2 other Proxxon Cutters. I use it a lot. These are the shifting lands jigs and guides. I use them a lot as well. Not sponsored, not sponsored. So generally recommend anything that I say, whether they help me in the studio or not, is 100% a genuine recommendation. But if you do not have one of these and you're working with foam, get yourself one. I worked for about I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 years, and I didn't even know about this. And I can't live without it. So mine just died a couple weeks ago. If you follow on Patreon, I made a post about that. I ordered a new one and it is in studio. So thanks to a patron actually for helping out buy the new one. Unnecessary, but I appreciate that nonetheless. Yeah, Proxxon Cutter I use all the time. What I like about that is, if you're working with foam and you go to the hardware store, this is stock standard 1/2 inch, 1 inch, 2-inch foam. It's got the tongue and groove edge on it. None of that is really super conducive to what you're doing here, or likely to be doing, because it's just too thick to work with that stuff a lot of the time. So something like this here, for example, you can see it's like a lot thinner than the 1/2 inch. And what I do is I just trim down foam. I can do sheets through this. Make super thin pieces, something like this, a little bit of a trim piece added on there. That's a really thin piece, probably about maybe less than a quarter of an inch. I can leave stuff in full 1/2 inch form, that's fine. But if I want to cut something that's going to give a curvature, so you guys can see that how it's curved, if I want to get a curved piece of foam, I'm going to need to have something a lot thinner. So the Proxxon Cutter really helps out with that. If you have a look right here, there, you can see how thin that piece is. It's probably about 1/8 of an inch. So just adding these little wall, these additions onto the wall side of this piece. This is actually the piece that was going to be next to those other 3 that we worked with. And the reason being is that there's supposed to be an offset. So let me grab one of those off the wall right now. Nothing damaged. If you guys heard that wicked pull, that was just, again, everything is command stripped to the wall, because it just gives me a lot of versatility to pull these off and work with them. So we go from foam to painted out versions. That's literally the version that you guys seen on the video there. We drop that under the light. So this is supposed to sit lower than this piece. And so what I'm doing on the wall is I just basically wanted to create that offset, but I'm going to have this halfway to the top, and then I can create that look. So there's that underside that's vaulted. It's supposed to have a little cavity there, so they'll sit together. So they don't look anything like each other, but they will when we get finished. Not today, but when they're all finished. Another great thing about foam, and I'll bring this up close to the camera, but I hope you guys can see, but do you see the little nicks and the bangs and the knocks kind of in the foam itself? When you're working with that, that's going to just be a natural byproduct, because this stuff is fairly soft. And so if you drop something on, if you nick it with your fingernail, if your paintbrush digs in too much, or you're using your cutter, you make a little bit of a mistake, whatever, all of that is just going to add to the look of this particular style, because I'm going for something sort of beat up and grungy and dirty. That's going to really add. If you're looking for something really crisp and pristine, you can also do that. You're just going to probably need to use a little bit of filler, but you can kind of see in there like the fingernail marks, the scuffs and the scrapes. this stuff, you know, sitting in the hardware store, people aren't looking after it. They're not looking at that material as a model making material. So oftentimes you get ding corners and what have you. So you got to either incorporate that into your design or find a way to work around that. So you can do something, there's a great product called foam putty. It's by Woodland Scenics. You can put that over foam. It'll fill in your cavities, and then you can sand that off. I've literally taken foam putty and remade corners on foam boards. You know, have a foam board sitting on a table. You hit it or you bang it and you knock the corner off. I've actually gone in and used the foam putty. It makes it a little bit more rigid than it originally was, and you can shape it and sand it to look really sharp. You can also do that over any of your scuffs, but in this case, I add the scuffs in. That becomes part of the look. So yeah, this piece I made last night, and one of the questions I get a lot is how do you fix your foam together? Obviously, you can see this is quite rigid. It's all there. It's not one piece of foam. This is actually vaulted, so there's a cavity in between here. These pieces are obviously really thin, but they're not going anywhere. They're stuck on there, and the answer to that is this stuff here. Again, not a sponsor, but a great product. The LePage. This is, let me switch to English. This is the low odor 3 times contact cement. This stuff is great. It comes in this yellow form. I have a paintbrush in there because I just use it to brush things on. The paintbrushes will get wrecked. They will not stay bristly, so it's basically a stick at this point. But what you do with this stuff here is you apply it to one side of your foam. Then my typical technique, what I do is, let me just grab this little piece. I grab 2 pieces of foam. I'll put it on one side, and matter of fact, I'll just show it because I mean that's what we do. We show things. So I just grab it, grab my stick, aka paintbrush, and I just go ahead and put it on the foam. So spread it out on the foam. Use as much as you deem necessary. Once it's on there, this would be the other piece that I want to add on. So what I will do is I will sandwich those pieces together just temporarily. Boom, boom, boom. Push them together. Brush any excess away. This is pretty good. I didn't squeeze out a lot. And then what I want to do is immediately remove those. And now you can see that I have glue on both sides. If you don't think you got enough spread, just push them together, give it a little bit of rub. Now it's a lot more even. You can see there's no gap in there anymore. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to set these aside for about 15 minutes. So it's 42 minutes into the stream. We'll come back at the 60-minute mark-ish. And then I'm going to show you what kind of bond you get with these and how this stuff works. Super fantastic for foam. Quick and easy. We'll set that aside and I'll try to remember. If not, folks watching at home, please remind me of that. So again, the LePage and the low odor stuff is fantastic. That way, if you leave the lid off or you're working with it for a while, you don't get a headache or anything like that. Like it's virtually, you can't smell it at all. So all these are done basically just using that technique to put these all together. So we got a couple vents. These vents are designed to sit on the wall. I'm gonna grab a piece of foam as reference here. Here is a piece. If you were wondering, because I didn't talk a lot about it, if you were wondering how I did the actual wall, this one here, while this is pretty close, it's a little bit darker but I did a tutorial as well on how to do this. It is so quick and easy. Anyone in chat who is a patron, you can spoil how quick and easy this is. Again, zero brushing, zero airbrushing. You need a washcloth that your wife will or significant other will not kill you if you use, because they aren't getting it back. And that is basically all you need. Foam brush to put on your paint initially, because I think that's the easiest way to do it. Base coat, some tin foil, and a washcloth. If you have a spritz bottle, that's also helps because that's how we do the speckling technique. But this is just done using a series of washes. It is so easy. Be careful. If you show people how good you are at washing walls, you may get roped into doing it. But it is literally as easy as washing a wall to get that look. So what these are for is they're going to actually end up going on the wall like this. And it's really hard with this blacked out look, but they're going to go on the wall like this. So from the profile look, it's going to be like that from the top down. And then from the side on, it's going to be here. I'm going to walk this up to this camera right here. And what it is just a little lower wall vent. And so there's a cavity in here, There's a little bit of a piece there, and so you can kind of see that look right there. There's a really, really rough, grainy image of something fairly low that looks exactly like this, at least the shape. I can tell that there's a front recess portion, some sort of vent, and it's definitely angled on the side like this. So I just decided to make two just to stick on the wall. So we have these. I'm going to show you how to do rough base coat on that, or where I get started with that. I showed you this already. This was not something that's in the image, but came up out of necessity. And this is just a black frame at this point, and these are, if you can catch them in the light there, those are just little rubber pads for furniture, and I thought they looked great as rivets. And I know there's not a ton of rivets in Star Wars, but I did want to have rivets on this particular piece because I wanted them to mark something significant in terms of function use. I'm just going to run to the other side of the table here. I think you guys can still hear me. And I have two of these. So the dollar store is your friend, and let me just be really clear. I spend a lot of money on things that are required. If they're expensive but good, I'll spend money on it. If it's functional but cheap, I'll spend money on it. And when you're looking for something to fit a function, you don't really need to look at the price first. You just need to do, is that the best thing for the job? And when I'm walking around, and my wife hates it, I am always looking for something to use for something. For example, I gotta tell you, I gotta preview a whole bunch of things coming up for Patreon as well. My wife we got some air fresheners upstairs. We got some diffusers. Well, they came with these like little caps, but if you look at these, ridges on them, little button on the front, fantastic. They look just like knobs. Knobs maybe for like a gonk droid that I need to build for the wall. We have to have a gonk droid sitting in front of this. Got to have some cargo and things. We have all that underway. So great example. Just save them. So I'm at the dollar store, walking through the dollar store, and I see these. It's great. I don't know what the actual function is. I think it's supposed to go in a school locker to keep your boots on it. My shoes, I wear a size 16. I'm not putting it on here at all. But yeah, so it's designed to go in the bottom of a locker and kind of keep your stuff from getting mucky and all that. Well, when I looked at this, I was like, well, this is a grate. And the reason I love this as a grate is that it actually isn't hollowed out. So if I put it on the wall, it's already achieving the look that I'm trying to achieve at the window, that sort of artificial backdrop. So I grabbed a couple of these. What I had to do is I had like this little logo here kind of along the side. I just took that off, and then I just scuffed the whole edge so that I could take paint a little bit better. So now what I need to do is I want to put these on the wall, but I didn't really love the frame just as is, and the problem with the backside is there's really no attachment point for this. What I wanted to do though, and you guys can't see it, but right down here and then over there, there's a plug-in, just a stock standard house plug, you know, where I plug my Proxxon Cutter in, or cameras, etc., etc. So I wanted to have something that I could cover those over, but not have to worry too much about having access or peeling something off the wall. So what I decided to do was just make this frame. And this frame is just designed to be a pressure fit. Now this grate just fits inside of there. It's a nice snug fit, not too snug. But when it's up on the wall like this and like this, the frame itself gets attached to the wall. So now we have the frame attached here. Put a command strip behind it, it's great. Then all I have to do is just pop out, and obviously it'll be attached, just pop out this portion here to gain access to those plugs. And I know it's a rather large plug cover, but it fits the look. I don't have to put this little small thing on the wall. It's not gonna be fiddly or anything like that. These become my plug covers. So I decided to do two just because, you know, want to be, you know, have them symmetrical or you know, similar in nature. And so I'm going to have, these are not on the design, but they sit low enough. In fact, if I profile this on the wall, this is a similar angle to what we have. They actually sit here, so you actually can't see them at all. But in giving the whole atmospheric shot of the wall, they're going to serve the purpose. The other one's way over on the edge, kind of the far extent of the wall. Not really in most shots, but again, will be functional. This piece, again, real simple. Cut on the Proxxon Cutter, trimmed it down. I used the existing foam thickness. It has a little bit of a bevel. You guys can't quite see that, but there you go. Just a little bit of a bevel on the edge. Again, something you can achieve with the Proxxon Cutter. Super easy. Nothing complex. easy build. Got to paint them up to look good. I got 2 of these to work on. Set these down here. There we go. I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the inspirational objects that gave sort of dimension to the pieces that are on the wall. Now, I talked a little bit about those designs of these pieces. Now, I took the reference image from The Mandalorian, obviously, but my wife, I ordered her a makeup mirror, and it came with this. So I don't know if they also watched The Mandalorian, but that came out looking pretty similar. So when I found this, and I already knew I needed to build this just became a great template, and that gives me a little bit of a segue into templates. Keep everything that you make a template for. I made a template for this window. This window, I had a template for this outside one, this inside frame. Then I took similar design like this and made a template for the door. I also made a template for the door design. This ended up being a template for this. And this ended up being, I couldn't have asked for a better piece. So I used it full on reference. The shape was right, the dimensions were right, like the proportions were right, the circle ended up being great. So I just used this to template everything, and it's fantastic. Because now I had a foam reference, this is foam as well, a foam reference that I could use on the wall, quick and easy. I could replicate it in terms of dimensions. I didn't have to use any rulers or math or measurements, which is something I'm a huge fan of. Used, known, or found objects and just index things. How big is the circle? The circle is this big. How big is this piece? It's this big. I don't need to know what those dimensions are. I don't have to remember a lot of things in terms of math. I can, I'm good with numbers, it's not a problem. It's just when you're trying to replicate things over and over and over, and you're building this object and this object and this object and this object, that's a lot of numbers to remember. How big was that? Was that 5 3/4 inch? No, that was 5 1/4 inch. It was this, what thickness, blah, blah, blah. Don't worry about it. You just have nice references. Here's another piece right here that I found. I haven't used this for anything yet, but I really like the design. I like the look. I like the, the thickness. I like the window portion of this. I think I could do a lot of stuff with this. While I may not use this on this particular build, I kept it and it's on hand, so I thought I'd show that to you guys as well. So that's a little bit how we got there. We talked a little bit about this. Let's move and get the frame up here, the door rack, I guess. I call it the rack, I believe, on the Patreon posts. So here's the rack. Let me grab that. It's large. It's rather large. So the rack is designed, let me go in profile here. The rack is designed to go on the wall like this, and it's designed to fit above the door. So you guys can see that there. Let me actually switch over camera and give you a large shot. Hello again, my friends. Yes, sorry. This was not designed to be in the shot. I will repeat that. So, as I was saying, all that, the genius moment that I had, I was just saying that fitting this into the frame, let me go back and do that again. Sorry about that, guys. It's gonna go right here. And you can basically see almost none of that. But the point I was making was, it doesn't matter how much you can see. If you can see it and it's part of your design, then you have to do, in my opinion, you have to do as much detail on this as this. And this piece, you can see in reference, you can only see half of them. This one, when put in frame, you will see the bottom 2 inches in most shots. But when I take that atmospheric shot, or if I'm taking that detailed shot, or I'm really trying to look at something, it's like anything. You have a large building, you probably can't see the 74th floor, but the 74th floor isn't just skimped on because you only see the first 3. So we'll put all the detail in there, and then everything else is just, just junk, or we don't paint it or whatever. No, they replicate the look for the entire building. This is not a 74-story building, but my point being is that it doesn't matter how much of it you see, it has to look the part. Otherwise, all you're going to see is that portion that's sort of half done, if you will. So let's slide back to the other scene here, so you can see less of me and more of what I'm talking about. So on the rack, this piece right here, what I need to do is I need to make it as if it's a prominent piece, but it's really not going to be. In fact, it's going to be quick and easy to do. I am going to paint it to be kind of scuffed up and look dirty and nasty and all those great things. I want to have it more of a rusted look, even more rusted than the other pieces, and a little bit more of the reddish tinge. It's by the door, so I want to kind of play with those 2 colors. But what I have found is that base coating out things in a rough color is the best way to start. And then you do your damage afterwards. You can't really plan a lot of the damage and the scuffs and the rusty parts when you start. It has to come a little bit more organic, at least for me. I like to become a bit more organic. So I'm gonna start, just so I can paint and talk at the same time, I'm gonna start by putting the base coat down on here. And then I'm gonna show you a little bit of a technique that I've used to sort of help me artificially create sort of the rusted portions or the damaged portions. And I'll talk a little bit about it on another piece first that I bring on here, because I got a couple more things I want to do before I get into painting. So great show and tell today. I'm all about that, especially if you haven't been here following along. So where are we at for time? I want to make sure I get this. Oh, cool. We're just rambling along here. Okay, so a couple more things that we're going to work on. One, we have a gonk droid come out. I'm not going to preview that, but just so you guys know, there will be a gonk droid for this build. But let me show you something else. This is a piece. This is a piece that I did a while ago, but and you guys can't really. Let me go there. This is actually a piece of cargo, really, if you will. And I've made it functional. So again, just using the Proxxon Cutter, a bunch of designs. This is just a piece of cargo. So the top is just designed to store a few things, cards, etc., etc. And it's got a nice little lid. The bottom of this, and I'll lift it up here. Now I got the piece up here. You can see that it's modeled after traditional Star Wars cargo, so I use some reference photos. So this one is going to be another piece, and we're going to kind of put those along the bottom to kind of create that street-like appearance, you know, that there's some stowage laying around. Great example of the piece getting beat up and moved around. I use this, I functionally move this piece around, even though it's not painted, because underneath this is a milk crate, and so the milk crate actually has some of the Deep Cut Studio acrylic resin buildings. But this milk crate is designed, or this is designed as a receptacle to the milk crate. So I slide that over, boom, transporting my little train to the gaming store. Why not walk in with a cargo piece? Also functionally in the studio, I can set that down, have another storage piece. I can have it functional storage. It looks cool, so cosmetically appeasing, and there's a little bit of design to it. And it's rigid enough to really support this. So another great example of foam usage. Another one that we have in studio that is a little further along is another cargo piece. And if you don't recognize this as a traditional Star Wars cargo, well, then you're not trying hard enough. So we have on here, and again, I haven't done a tutorial on this, but if there's any interest, you guys can let me know in chat or let me know later on how to do the stenciling on here. So this is actually done. Stenciling's done right on here, so this isn't acrylic or peel and stick vinyl stickers or anything like that. Whole box made using the Proxxon Cutter. Again, just frame of reference. template, circle, we're easy and going. You can see on the top, and this is what I'm going to talk a little bit about, how to do that damage. So the damage on the top is not quite as far along as the damage here, and then certainly not, this is the unfinished side, but I'm going to show you how I use a little technique to help me put that sort of damage or rust spots on there organically in the design. So this piece is just basically a big green box. It's framed around a box, so again, you can use storage if you want. And it's just another piece of cargo that I've experimented with making one-to-one terrain to see if I could do it. You guys can let me know if I succeeded. But again, it's just a physical large box, something for the studio, and I think it'll look great on the streets of Nevarro, aka our backdrop here. So just another piece that we have. Okay. All right. Let me throw this up here. Okay, so let's just base code out a few things and get going here. It is at the 1 hour mark. Let me go back to that piece just before I start here. There's our glue. You can see, or maybe you can't because it's disappearing, a little bit here, but what happens with that contact cement is that it goes translucent. When it goes translucent, that means you are ready to stick the pieces together. Now, it's kind of like a super glue in the sense that it sticks really quickly. You don't have a lot of working time. And if you try to pull them apart, you weaken the bond. But let me just go ahead and put those together. Just gonna stick that part together. Perfect. You don't have to go this slow. I'm just trying to align them. I'm gonna give it one press and one press. And now we have a bond. So here is the bond. I'm teasing it pretty hard. Okay, so I got that apart. But that's a lot of tension, and literally in the worst possible way, I'm extending that joint. Now, if I pull that apart, I need to put it back together. It's great. It actually will work. So when I put that back together, again, it has just about as strong a bond. I can get it apart a little bit easier now. But when that bond goes together, if you were just to put that together and leave it, and then leave it for an hour or so, I instantly put that on and pulled it apart. You put that on there, come tomorrow, you're not peeling that apart. That's not coming apart. All these pieces, they're not coming apart. You can see I'm handling them. I can pry these apart, but they're not coming apart easily by any means. So that contact cement, it's great. It goes together, and the beauty of this stuff here is that it can hold a curvature. So if you're putting on something like this, for example, and you kind of have to have it go around, I just put that straight on. I didn't tape that. I didn't do anything with that. Boom, slam that around. Boom, slam that together. Put these things, any flat surface to flat surface, absolutely gonna bond super, super fast. I used to use a lot of weld bond, and I still use weld bond, but the problem with weld bond is it needs to have air exposure. The nice stuff about this is that it gets the air exposure before you stick it together. You go ahead and put those two surfaces together, and then they stick almost instantly, and they give you a really strong bond, and it only gets stronger. It's really no mess. You guys saw it's easy to clean up. If you get anything that extrudes out the edge, all you have to do is rub your thumb along it, and you can take that up. It does form a little bit of a meniscus, so if you're taking up something from the edge, if you start to pull or tease, it'll be kind of like mozzarella cheese. It will really string out. You can pull your glue out from your bond. So if you have an excess piece that you want to get rid of and it's kind of a lot, cut it first so that you get a little bit of a cleaner line, and then it won't pull out your glue that's on the inside. So just a little tip of working with that. All right, now time to do some painting. I'm going to start with these small pieces actually because they're staring me in the face, and I think they're easier to work with on camera than this large rack. But so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to grab a foam brush, and I go through these foam brushes a lot. Generally don't reuse a lot of them, but because they kind of, I feel that they get broken and damaged, but we'll work with it. So what we're going to do is take this piece, and I'm going to do the paint job on this exactly the same as I did here, at least this working stages of it. Obviously I won't be able to airbrush on here because it's loud, but I'll just kind of show you how I got that prepped up to that particular stage there. All right, so I'm gonna just take some metallic paint, just cheap stuff. I use a lot of expensive paints and pigments and oils and washes to do this type of work. I'm not using expensive paint to do this type of work here. So use it when you need it, not just because you have it. Just gonna go grab myself a block of foam as a nice little palette. All right, putting some acrylic silver down here. If you guys have questions, please ask so that I can just ramble on about something else. And then I'm just going to just start base coating this out. And then I will use your questions to entertain me as I paint, because now it's just boring stuff. So I'm not too worried about really coverage or brush strokes. Coverage, I guess I'm a little bit more concerned with. I'm not worried about brush strokes or direction. And the reason that I'm kind of changing it up is there's a few cuts and scrapes. I want to just make sure that I at least get the silver color paint in there to start. By the way, this is called Silver Morning. So it's much more of a silver. All right. And again, sometimes I paint surfaces that you're not necessarily going to see. Sometimes I don't. For example, this is going to go on the wall this way. I painted out the back, sorry. The inside, the bottom, or the top rather, I did not, because there's this little shield. So really, no matter which way you look at it, unless your head is on the ground and you were looking up this way, you won't be able to see that. But on the wall, that's the profile there. So you can see front on, you cannot see any. You can't even see the wall behind it because of that shield in the front. If I angle it a little bit, you can see where that is, but you can't see the pink until I am really, really angled. So again, I just didn't bother painting that inside. At the very least, let me know what you guys think about the design so far, if you've been following along. Even if you haven't, I kind of walked you through start to finish. So if you have any questions about what's to come, or comments and or suggestions, something that you think I should include that I maybe haven't thought of. And I don't even need to have a thick coverage of this. In fact, I kind of don't want it to have a thick coverage because I want some of that dark color to show through, and it's almost like a modulation if I don't get it all. I do want to make sure I get some over all the black. I don't want to have any like glaring black portions gleaming through at this point. Tight fit up in the corner here. Go. And why silver? I just feel like the metallic finish underneath the black is a really nice way of getting a sheen on this. As you'll note here, this piece was done with the exact same technique. So while it doesn't really have that same sheen, you can kind of get that metal appearance, and so that will come through. In fact, I actually brightened this one up versus where it was to start, because after this I'll end up airbrushing over a steel. So it's again the metallic line from Vallejo. It's literally just called steel. It goes over, and it's a bit of a dark color. It's got a really nice metallic pigment in it, and it really unifies the look. But before I do that, I'm actually going to take a black wash, a 50-50 black wash, a black acrylic paint mixed with water, straight water. And I don't do a lot of washes with just water, but that's actually going to go over this piece first, and that's really going to set the recessed tone color. And when I get that recessed tone color in there, when I hit it with the steel, what I do is I hit the flats. I don't go in and try to angle out every corner. I set that modulation tone with that steel, so it's not quite this to the steel. It's a little bit more of a darkened look to the steel, and that actually unifies the look a little bit nicer. All right, grab a little bit more paint. So we got 11 people hanging out. Let me know where you're from, first time, long time, whatever. Great to hear who's hanging out. I know Anthony was in earlier. He's got some like really nasty sort of pigment, stuff in the paint itself. It's just kind of rolling on here, so a little bit of a coagulation, if you will. Just gonna brush some of that off here. I was wondering where that stuff was coming from, but must just be a little bit of the pigment in the paint itself. It's just going to add to the look. Actually, it's not terrible. I thought it was some of the glue coming off. Listening in from Dallas, Texas. Okay, perfect. Dropping in for a little bit. Cool to see more of the hobby side. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, this is where I got my start, and this is where I cut my teeth. So this is where I spend most of my time, is doing the hobby stuff. I do a lot of streaming, but certainly the hobby is what I do for the business side. Again, sorry, this is sort of more boring stuff, but I thought it would be best to, if I'm going to walk you guys through some hobby streams, I should probably at least do some of the foundational stuff. I'm not going to spend a lot of time painting the inside. Like I said, you can't really see the inside, but it's a little hard to get. A lot of paint in there, but I'll do enough to give it coverage. And am I worried about fingerprints or touching freshly painted surfaces? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. All right, 48 Thrones painting some Kill Team. Awesome. Actually, going to give this a really good shake here. Anthony is highlighting some Super Commandos. Nice. Okay, good. Now, like I said, grab some stuff to hobby if that's your thing, right? Gonna keep the time right at 2 hours. Yeah, this stuff is fantastic for like this little. I think I have 2 bottles of this. I'm just curious if the other one's like this at all. Not sure where I put my other one. I'm gonna go grab the other one just quick. Just don't love all the little pigmenty pieces. You guys probably can't really see it, but oh yeah, there we go. That's a world of difference. Get rid of those pigments off my brush. There you go. Get all this like metallic silver all over my work mat here, but you know what? It's supposed to be a work mat. All right, first one is just about done. So, just to show, you can see, really not overly concerned. Obviously, got to get that side. Not really overly concerned. I'll bring it up to this camera as well with any of the, the coverage. I want it to be, a little bit darker in here. That'll naturally create that shadow, as you can see. So, natural shadows are great. That's literally what a 1-to-1 scale object's going to do for you. you don't have to worry about setting a lot of those shadows in because they're going to be achieved based on natural light. Oh, that was the, yeah, that is uniquely distinct. How much different that is. Must just be a slightly bad batch. Whatever, we'll make it work. Like I said, it's for this rough design stuff here. Real quick and easy. Brush that in a few different directions so you get a little bit of a swirl pattern in there. You'll also notice that when I do the black, I think I'll be able to do the black on here. I think that'll dry enough. I'll be able to come back to this. When I do the wash portion, I'm actually going to stipple most of that on there to again create that sort of hammered metal look. So, all right, I'm just going to set that one down. There we go. I will, just for the interest's sake, I'm going to move the rack up here too and get going with the rack, just so that I can have something different on screen for you guys. Boop, boop, boop. There we go. Just going to clear myself some space. Get that up on camera. 6 a.m. driving to work, listening in. Fair enough. Bryant checking in from Australia. No holiday today in Australia, I guess. All right, so same thing, same premise on this. I'm just gonna do it because you guys can see how the paint's gonna go down on this this object, and we'll start transforming it right away. Now, this is going to be red as the base coat. I'm still going to put the metallic down. Just because that metallic paint is super important for setting the look. Grab that proper one. Like I said, if you guys haven't seen it, I really do. That's the nasty one. I do encourage you guys to go check out how that wall portion was made. If you guys want to check that out, like how quick, fast, and easy it is to put down the paint in a modulation. It's a lot of spritz bottles, it's a lot of washing, but it's so fast. I have not actually used a physical paintbrush short of a foam brush on this entire project. Not one. No exaggeration, not one. Do this because you guys can actually, I think, see the paint color going on. How quick. The longest part of this entire thing was not even cutting it. It was actually gluing it together because I had to glue it in sequence so that I would maintain the strength and maintain the proportions of what went where and what supported what. Paintbrush. If I said paint, I meant paintbrush, or it got cut off. But yes, paintbrush. And you won't go through a lot. I mean, you'll go through a bit depending on how big your surface is. But even the wall itself, I bought a gallon of paint to do all the base coating, and I did 3 coats of the base color, which was kind of a really light, almost off-white gray. I did 3 coats just to really make sure that the wall itself had a nice protective coat and it was thick, and I still have paint left. And that's an 18-foot wall, by the way, 18 feet wide by 8 feet high. So it's not a small project by any means. If you are building, this is something I reference quite a bit in the other videos, and you're making foam structures, keep in mind that typically your foam will come printed with writing like this, for example, on one side. You'll want to, if as much as possible, work on the other side. Only reason being is that this foam, the writing that's on the foam, not sure which camera is best to capture it, the writing that's on this foam will actually create an impression in the foam itself. So if I were to, let me just give you a quick, okay, so lightly scraping that over, you can see on there, even though I covered the part here, you can see how strong that indentation is of the imprint. And so when you're doing that, you're going to end up with like writing or designs or things like that. Now, what do? Well, if you want to shim this and trim it off, you can. If you want to make it thinner, that's fine. That's how I get rid of the writing on the thick portions. Or you simply just work on the other side as much as possible. Now, something like this, the rack, where I have multiple sides visible, it's a little bit more difficult. So I tried to like keep them to the top side, so something that was facing up to the ceiling. So if the rack's like this, I try to keep the writing, as you can see right here. Well, you probably can't, but it's there. There's a lot of writing on the back side, or on the underside, also facing up, or anything that was facing the wall itself. So anything going into the wall here, I try to keep that writing on the back side there as much as possible. Sometimes it's difficult, or you don't necessarily have the right piece of foam, and rather than cut a new sheet or get more, you're just going to use what you have. So it's not something that you can't get around. You could sand it, you could multiple coat of paint it, you could work it into your design somehow, you could cover it over with something else. So there is ways to get around it, but just something that you can keep in mind as just an easy step, easy forethought that prevents a little bit of need to cover up later. So I'm just going to jump to the other side. I think I should sound about the same over here. Slide these back sort of in frame. If you guys haven't checked out any of the previous videos, all the videos on Patreon do become eventually available to the public. So sometimes they're 3 or 4 months behind, sometimes longer. But if you guys want to check them out, you can. It all becomes free eventually. This is also a free hobby hangout, so sometimes I do them just behind the paywall. For early parts of this project, I did that. Just a way to keep the Patreon content exclusive, which we want to do. We want to honor that, but at the same time, we want to make it generally available. When I say we, and I mean me. All right. Paint here. Trickiest part about this rack is going to be remembering and noting that I didn't miss any like inside surface or outside edge, or when I was doing the black base coating, I was like, oh yeah, I forgot this entire side in this orientation, and it can sometimes happen. Just painting that. One thing you do want to do is, because you're putting the paint on relatively thin, kind of scraping it out over, you want to make sure that you aren't globbing the paint, or you're not leaving globs, and you're not having paint trickle over the edges. So you'll notice that typically what I'll do is just cover off all of one particular orientation. So I'm going to do as far as I can reach, this is a bit of a longer one, but I'll do all the downward portions here. I'll do all the fronts of those. That way I can remember as I'm working that, oh yeah, I have got that surface. I just changed my grip just to purposely create some different different orientations in the paint. All right, slide that over. Cognizant of the time here, okay. So what I'll do is I'll just work on this for about another 10 or 15 minutes, and then I'll go in and use that first piece that we did, this one here, and I'll show you just a quick technique on how I can use tape to really help me sort of index that damage look that I want to replicate, similar to those crates that I showed you earlier. So. Grab a little bit more paint, get in there. Okay, now what I'll do is I'm going to flop this just up here, like so. Rather large section, so I'm just going to go along the top, or the front, the side, whatever you want to call this. I don't generally put a lot of the acrylic paint down at any one time. I mean, you can put as much as you really want out. I do smaller portions because I try not to overly saturate the foam brush. I find if they get too heavy with paint, they start to deteriorate quicker. The little plastic paddle that's on the inside is generally the thing you got to look out for. So if you get too much saturation on them, they get a little droopy at the top. And then if they get droopy at the top, the paddle itself will become exposed. And then when you're rubbing along the foam, that paddle will actually kind of create a scrape. So you'll sometimes, and you can see right here, actually I'll show you this camera. You can see right there how we have a little bit of a breakage, right? So there's a little foam paddle right there. And if I rub that brush too much on that side, that foam paddle will start to scrape the foam. Well, again, talking about damage into the foam being something you work in, if you have a very symmetrical piece of damage, like ruts back and forth, that's going to be a little bit harder to hide. So what I'll do now that I have that damage on that portion, I'll flip the brush over, I'll use it on the other side, the non-damaged portion, and I'll use a little bit more of a shallow stroke. That way I'll ensure that the paddle will actually run flat to the foam rather than up and down, because the up and down will have a tendency to grip in, and then I can drag and create a scrape. So I'm going to flip it. So this is the broken side, go this side down, and we'll have a much more shallow brush stroke. And again, we'll just toss this out and get another one and rinse and repeat. So, but we'll get as much as we can out of it, because again, functionally it's still working. But something to be cognizant of, that the brushes won't last you forever, and if you start to notice that tear, just be cognizant of the spatula that is on the inside. Okay, so kind of running out of surfaces that I can paint without causing too much chaos on the table. I do not do any historical gaming. At least at present, I am not doing any historical gaming. I have primarily just been doing Star Wars Legion because because of both build content, filming content, podcast content. It's exceptionally hard, but to do both. But if I'm paying attention correctly, think this is a long time no talk buddy of mine. I think one to red. So give me a shout if that is in fact you, my kind sir. There he is. Now he's gonna wonder how my great memory has kicked in and lasted all this time. Okay, so we're getting there. A few more edges that I can do while I'm hanging out here. We'll get back and I'll show you kind of how that final technique works, and you guys can keep up with the project. I'll be posting lots of photos. Typically they're just on the old Patreon as a public access piece. So, but like I said, you guys can get all the content that goes out and has ever gone out for 5 bones. It's quite reasonable. It will never change. You'll just keep getting all the old stuff, the new stuff. You not pay anything and get it all for free too. So there's that option. All right, so these are going down nicely. Yeah, thick and thin, just basically getting it on there to get some coverage. We're gonna be stripping a lot. Well, not a lot of this off, but some of this paint is just gonna literally come back off in the next step, and I'll kind of show you that on the smaller piece because this has to dry for a bit. I should mention too, if you guys are cutting with a Proxxon cutter, one of the really important aspects of using it that you want to pay attention to is temperature of your blade. So like effectively your wire. If you were trying to replicate cuts, even the thickness particularly, if you're running your blade too hot, or if you have it at different temperatures, it's actually going to burn away different amounts of your material. There's this fine balance between the temperature that you have in the blade, the speed at which you push it through, and the thickness of the foam. And so while there is, well, literally written on the side, some suggestions in terms of what temperature for what thickness, there isn't any suggestions for speed, but you want to make sure that you're not getting a lot of wire deflection. So again, your wire staying up and down. If you're pressing it too fast, your wire will start to bend or deflect. You want to try to avoid that. But what I was going to say is that just pay attention to the speed at which you're pushing your material through. And that's easy because you can physically have the reference of the blade deflecting. But then also pay attention to how much material you're losing. And when you have a blade running hot, which you need to have for thicker foams, obviously the thicker the foam, the hotter the blade, then you have less deflection. But what you have to pay close attention to is that when you are pushing it through and your blade's running hot, you have to be consistent, because if you stop, and the reason that I'm saying this is because I can see one scorch mark here on the side. One of the things that you need to pay attention to, and I probably can do that in, why talk when I can show, but I'll continue explaining. You have to just make sure that you're not going to artificially burn your material or create damage to the material unnecessarily. I'll grab a couple pieces of foam. Just going to grab 3 pieces of foam here just for the purposes of demonstration. Just teasing that piece apart, see how strong it is. It's pretty. It's getting stronger by the minute. All right, let me plug this in. There we go. All right, so the Proxxon cutter. Yeah, you guys can see that. Perfect. So the Proxxon Cutter, I typically, when I put mine away, I take my, I take the, I don't know if you have to do this, but I do it. I take the blade or the wire out of the grip. I just like to take a little bit of blade tension off because there is a bit of tension that exists. So I'm just gonna pop that in. It's nice and secure. Just gonna go ahead and reattach that. Perfect. So on the side, I'm gonna sit down here because I've been standing for a while. So on the side of the Proxxon Cutter, I'll turn it this way so you guys can see it. There's a couple knobs. This is the tension for the wire. This is the rheostat, so the temperature control. So there's a 1 all the way up to a 6. I'm just gonna pop it into the middle here. And then you have an on-off button, really easy, and there's an indicator light, which is right here, and it'll start to hum and you'll know that it's on. So when you are running your material through your cutter, I'll kind of go like this, I guess, because I can do that. I got 3 thicknesses of material here. So I got 1.5 inches, I got 1 inch, and I have 1/8 of an inch that I've trimmed off a piece. So, and you can see that it has really, really clean edges. So when you're running your foam through, and I'm just going to turn this on, and you go up to a 6, the blade just starts to hum, and it gets really, really red hot, and it's way, way too hard on it. In fact, when the blade's running that hot, if you are too fast with it, so you're gonna snap that blade almost instantly. So generally around like a 2, I feel is pretty good. So I have this on a 2, and I'm gonna run a couple materials through at a 2 so that you can kind of see it. And you won't be able to see the blade deflection because I don't have a close cam, but I talk a lot about this in the other videos. But so I'm just gonna go ahead and I'm just gonna push it pretty consistent and pretty slow through this. Like that's probably slower than I normally would be pushing this through. So I'm just gonna push this through. Almost 0 blade deflection there. Just gonna turn this off for a second. Really nice, crisp cut, looks clean, good edge, no burrs or anything like that, and really looks nice. I don't have any like burn marks or anything like that. But let me put the same piece through, same temperature, and what I'm gonna go through a bit slower, and I'm gonna change my speed on occasion. So sometimes I'm gonna go a bit faster, slow down, go quick, slow down, go fast. Okay. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab this, turn this off. I'm gonna go up and I'm gonna show you on the back of my mouse pad because it's gray. I'm gonna put these pieces together. I'm gonna go right up to the camera as close as I can so that you can see. There we go. So if you look at that, the first part is this side, and you can see that there's a couple pinholes, and you can see that it doesn't quite go together. Now you can see the middle. The middle's when I sped up. When I sped up, that line is so crisp that I can re-heal that by putting that together. And then at the end, I sort of started and stopped a little bit, but I stayed a bit more consistent. So what I happened to do there is going too slow, but I burned a more consistent line versus the start where I start, stop, and it puts those pinholes in your foam. So that's a problem. So that's where one temperature, which let's say that was the appropriate temperature, isn't enough to account for proper cutting. So let's go through this 1 inch piece of foam here. And again, I'll use the exact same speed that I used. So this is so slow because I can't go any faster. And I'm deflecting the blade already. So what the blade deflection means is that even at this really slow pace, I'm deflecting the blade because it's not able to cut through this quick enough. And I'm just using my hand to drag that as fast as I can without breaking the blade. Okay. So if you look at this piece now, you can see all those wavy lines. all those lines are where the blade was like trying to catch up to the cutter. So not near fast enough. So if I just turn this up to a 3, now I'm at a 3. I'm going to run the same thing back through, and I'm going to use the same basic pressure. So you can see how much smoother and quicker that's going through. And if I look at this, other than the 2 jitters that I had at the start, which you can clearly see there, look how much smoother that is. That means I'm at the appropriate temperature and the appropriate speed. Why does any of that really matter when you're just going to stick it onto a wall? And it probably doesn't. But if you're trying to do something like with a little bit more of a clean detail, then you probably do want to have. So you can see the top of this piece here, it's got a few jitters in it. You can see the blade was deflecting a little bit and you get that sort of scalloped look. You get something like this, although intentionally I put a few nicks in here, you can see a few nicks there. You get something like this though, you don't want any of that jittering. I want to have this really clean and flush because I want to be able to have a smooth finish there. So this would be an example where you do need to find that appropriate temperature, especially when you start cutting something like this. Like have a look here. You can see how clean that is. Now the other side I didn't care about, and going through faster, look at the scallops in there. So again, it does matter if you want to have a nice clean finish. So we still got the cutter running, by the way. Let me take the 1.5 inch foam. I'm going to run it through at a 3. And again, now that I'm at a 3, trying to go the same speed, not a chance. Blade deflection, I'm getting some jitters in here. Get a bit of speed, but it's getting hung up. And you'll see every spot that it gets hung up. And this is just me trying to put constant pressure on pushing this through. Okay, have a look at the cross section. There you go. You can see jitter, jitter, jitter. Now I wasn't going too fast because if I was, these lines would be deflected into a scallop. But I am going to need to up the temperature because it's getting hung up on those. I'm going to turn this up to a 4, again, not to a 6, and then I'll run this through again. Have a look. So if I've shown you nothing today, I've shown you that. And this just comes with a bunch of practice on the Proxxon Cutter, kind of knowing how fast, what temperature, what thickness, etc., etc. But I mean, quick little tips, if they help you, that's great. They might help you out in the long run. So yeah, so that is just something to keep in mind when you're using the cutter. If you really want to go to the extreme, if I keep that on a 4 and I'm trying to cut an 1/8 of an inch thick piece of material, one of the things that you're going to notice right away is it's going to work beautifully. But if you ever stop or get hung up on anything, that's what you're going to get. A big burn mark right through. Put that together. If you stop even for a moment, you're going to get a large hole. You get that arrowhead look. That just means that it was going fine, it stops, it heats up, and then you get it back to temperature, and you get that sort of like diamond wedge cut into your foam. It's unsightly, it doesn't look good. The more you do, the more you'll have, and you want to eliminate those. So yeah, just stuff to keep in mind. I'll turn the Proxxon Cutter off. We'll get rid of that. Great tool, fantastic. Don't let any of that shy you away from getting one. Highly recommend the tool. Okay, let's get rid of all of this and do our last thing before we get out of here. 144, perfect. I'm doing great for time today. So the piece that we had before, I'm just going to use this as a working backdrop. The piece that we had before, use this as a working backdrop, has had a few minutes to dry, 15 minutes or so. It's surface dry at this point. feeling feeling a little bit tacky and damp in some spots, which doesn't matter for the purpose of what we're going to do. So what you want to do is you want to get some tape. Now, I'm going to grab a couple other types. Sorry about that, guys. I have to go to the far side of the studio. So just a little talk about tapes. So these are painter's tapes. There's various thicknesses. This is green. This is blue. Sorry, this is green. This is green. They're similar, different thicknesses. This is blue. This is blue as well. It's packing tape. This is modeling tape, basically used for masking off materials, and I use this for doing a lot of the stencil work. So just so you know, not all painter's tape is the same. A lot of people are concerned with the bleed. How tight a fit can you get? Making sure that nothing bleeds through. If you're painting a house, it's particularly important. For terrain, yes, it can be for sure. But one of the things you do want to pay attention to, I use painter's tape religiously because I love the fact that when I'm making something out of foam, this is my go-to for painter's tape. Take 2 pieces of foam. Oh, I want to see if this is going to go together. Great. Gonna pop that painter's tape on there, run that there, run that there. Get my other side. Perfect. Now I can just figure out, oh, is that right size? It's not going to move around a lot on me. It looks great. It's not going to shake apart. It's going to hold it roughly in place. I can get good measurements. I can look at designs. I can dry fit effectively with tape. I love it. Pull it off. It's not going to do any damage to this. I'm not concerned about anything. We are fine. That is my big use for painter's tape. Painter's tape, that's not functionally what it is designed for. It's designed to mask off an area, allow you to paint one surface and not get paint on another. Great. When you look at this painter's tape though, they look functionally the same. They feel roughly the same. This one's a bit more rough than this. But what you want to do is pay attention to how many days is that painter's tape rated for. Some painter's tape you can leave on for 20 days and pull it off without any damage. Some painter's tape is only designed for 3 to 5 days before, if you pull it off, you'll get some damage. You'll want to pay attention to that if you're going to use it for the purposes of protecting a surface while you're painting on another one. So don't put it on, leave it for 3 weeks, come back, pull it off and be like, wow, it damaged the paint that was underneath. Well, if the rating is not appropriate, then you are going to have some of that. What are we going to use painter's tape for? Well, we're going to use painter's tape for a couple things. So put painter's tape on this right here. I'm going to put it over the painted surface that I just had. I'm going to pop it on there. I'm going to rub it in, keep it smooth. Then I'm going to pull it off. Now when I pull it off, what did it pull off? Almost nothing. Even though I just put this paint on like 20 minutes ago, this painter's tape is not tearing off any of this paint. I'm just doing it several times. A little bit of metallic flake there, but not significant enough to show you anything here. Let's try the green stuff. Now this is 3M stuff. This is like Duramax, so off-brand. We're gonna put this stuff on. We're gonna pull that off. Again, virtually nothing on here. Not pulling anything off. So you're not gonna get, even with this stuff, pretty good after like 15 minutes. You'd think that the paint would come off easily because it's been on there for a short amount of time. Let's try a little bit of this stuff. Going from least expensive, more expensive, more expensive. Let me find the edge here. This stuff is what I use to do stencils because this stuff won't bleed. It's designed for models, and it also is designed to be removable, but it has a really flush cut. What I like about this stuff as well is I actually cut my stencils directly out of this. I reinforce, so I put this down, for example, I'll put this stuff down and I'll make my stencil out of it. Let me just grab a little bit, I don't want to waste a ton of it, but what I'll do is I'll put this down, I'll cut my stencil out of this. Let me grab my, find a ruler, boom, boom, boom. I'll cut, like, let's just say I'm gonna cut a triangle out of this. I won't typically cut on foam, I'll cut on something harder, but whatever, you get the point. Okay, so I'll make my stencil out of this. And then what I'll do is I'll take some painter's tape, this stuff, because it also basically can stick to multiple surfaces, and I'll make a reinforcement of this stencil. So this material here doesn't cut as cleanly to make your stencil. It doesn't quite adhere as smoothly. But this other tape does create a really nice bond. I'm just going to peel this up so I can show you. It's a little difficult on foam, but I will do my best here just to simulate my attempted mock-up of this. If it wants to come off here. Well, almost worked. There we go. So what I do is I replicate the application of this with the stencil in the middle, and I just keep reapplying it. Pop it down, move it, pop it down, move it. The paint bleeding, if it's gonna happen, happens around the yellow, and the yellow has got the tightest fit. The application in place is gonna be held by the blue, and the blue is gonna hold without damaging the materials. So where I'm worried about paint bleeding, not gonna happen. Another nice thing about expanding your stencil out a little bit and not using all yellow to do that is if you're airbrushing your stencil in, you have enough area here to have some overspray, and it's not going to get on the rest of your material. So I will show you how to do that when we do some stenciling, and I will do a free, some more of these, and I'll make sure that's a priority. I'll do all of these in the next one I do, so that you guys can kind of see. So I'll probably have that one up. I might even do another one next week before I get back to work, just so I can get some continuity for this video for you. But neither one of those, green, blue, or yellow, is going to peel up any of this. Now let's switch over to the packing tape here. Just this is Scotch brand packing tape. You know it's packing tape because it makes the most obnoxious sound in the world. So let me pop this down on here, and we're going to see if we can get any pull for here. Again, not getting any surface pull really at all. And I need to grab one more thing because I literally forgot to grab it. So again, even the packing tape's not going to remove any of the material. Be right back. Okay, here it is. Sorry about that, guys. I forgot one more tape. This is T-Rex brand tape, similar to a Gorilla, similar to gun tape, similar to duct tape, what have you. This is the one that we're looking for. All right, let me grab a piece of this. And what we're going to do with this is we're going to stick it on to the piece here. I'm just going to give it a press into place. Now what I want to do is I want to be generous with the pulls and you want to aggressively stick it in, and you want to aggressively pull it off. Now, I'm going to just do a couple here so I can give you the context of, and sometimes it will bunch up and lose its stick, which is fine. Get a bit more. I'm just going to do a bit more of the surfaces here. Okay, I'm going to do one more, and I'll show you what it's doing to the actual build. This paint actually has really good coverage. So. There you go. And it's going to show a lot more in some areas, and I'll explain which areas those are in a second. Than others, and it's actually going to show in really good wanted areas, because based on the fact that we're trying to use this for chip damage. And just about done. Enough that I can show you. Again, you can see it's fairly quick process. You can do as much or as little as you want. Okay. Now, let me bring this to this camera here. So what I used that to do was to go along anywhere where I would want to have some chipping. And so I will go along the edges. So you can see here. See, and the reason that I do it on this, and there's a specific reason why you want to have it on the first layer and why you want the pink to come back through. And I'll explain in a second. So going along with that aggressive tape, even doing it on the edges, it's going to create some pits and pocks. And then we'll go over here, maybe this light will be a little bit more friendly to some of those darker recesses. And so that's the color that we got with the base coat. It looks great. You'll start to get some fraying and cracking. You'll get a little bit of chipping here along the bottom. You'll get some chipping and cracking along here. So what this is going to do is it's physically going to take a little bit of the top of the foam off, and obviously take a little bit of the paint off. And what happens when you break the surface of the foam like this is that it opens up the cells a little bit of the foam. So the next step here is, again, using it's almost like a paint by numbers at this point. Using all the chipped exposed pink areas, I'm gonna go in first, and I'm gonna push in a little bit of darkened wash. So a black or a dark silver or a gray, something that is a little bit darker than this particular color. Now, I'm gonna wash the whole thing, and I'm gonna show you that. And so that's gonna help me pick that technique up. I'm gonna do a bit more chipping just before I do that. But the reason that I wanna go a little bit lower than that is that I'm not just then painting on the chipping effect. The chipping effect's actually going to have both a different texture as well as be a little bit recessed, and that's what it's supposed to look like. Now, this is difficult to do on a model or a figure or something like that because you're unable to get into the surface, but it's not hard to do on something like this. If you looked at that box that I did before, all of that damage was done below the surface of the initial color. It was all painted base color, and then I went in and chipped that material off. I probably could have got to this a bit quicker, and it would have probably had a little bit more of a dramatic effect. In fact, if I bring this rack up really quick, which hasn't dried as long, I can probably do some of this to this as well. Yeah, it's not bad. There we go. Just got to be a little bit more aggressive with the paint pulls, and some areas will pull a little bit different than others. So yeah, it's starting to pull a little bit on that, even though this has been down about the same amount of time, I guess, at this point. But yeah, so just I'll go ahead and chip a whole bunch of that. This will take a lot more work to chip and damage at that, and that one won't need a ton of it. But let me get back to this one just for a minute. Now, if you try to do it on the flats, like I'll show you right here, if you try to do it on the flat surfaces, you're not going to get a lot. There's a little bit on here, but it's harder to do on a flat surface. You need to have an edge, because you have to get sort of you have to get up underneath the paint a little bit, and when it's laying on the flat surface, it's a little bit more challenging. But on the edges where you're going to have more chipping effect, you're going to get that. And I just pulled a nice section there. I say nice. It's like, well, if you want to damage this, in this particular case, yes, I do. That's the effect I'm going for. So let me grab just a little bit more on this, and then I'll go and get the wash set up, and I'll finish with that for today. Let's see if I can get a bit more over on this back edge. A little too aggressive on that, to pin that. There we go, we got a nice chunk there on this corner there. And that's really what this is a vent, right? So around the front, that's where we're gonna want to have that aggressive nature. Okay, now we're gonna set up a really quick wash. I'll show you exactly how to do it so it's done on stream. I lied to you, I'm not going to do it on stream because I already have one ready to go. I forgot I had one. So I just use a little jar. I use a little bit of paint. Again, black, acrylic, just cheap stuff. I'm doing a straight 50-50. So 50% of the paint that you put in here, match that with 50% of the water that you want to add. Similar contents. It's in here. I'm just going to go ahead and grab something to stir this really quickly with. I'll grab a piece of foam because I have that handy. And I'm just going to mix that up. I'll show you for consistency wise when I put this out on the stream how thin it is. So you can see there, hopefully, kind of brushing so you get a little bit of thickness, but clearly it's a liquid. I'm going to go ahead and grab a small brush, just a foam brush here, and I'm just going to go ahead and give this a wash. Now, I'm going to go over. Let me go over this leading edge here first so that I can show you. So, just brushing it over, you really don't see any discerning difference between the areas that we have varnished away or the main area. So I'm gonna go ahead and do this real time because it's a fast process and you actually don't want to leave this on here a long time. I'm going to just do the outside surface so that I can actually still grab and handle things. Normally I would just not worry about getting my hands mucked up or anything like that, but I'm just going to do this outside portion, and then I'll do the inside portion after. As long as I do as long as I have the continuity of all one surface here, I can do the rest after. I'll just do the back leading edges here. All right, so that has gone on there. It's been left for precisely that amount of time. You can see how liquidy that is. I just gotta grab a piece of paper towel. Now the paper towel choice that you have is, you don't have to be particularly picky about it, but I will tell you this. I prefer to have something with the most amount of pattern possible. Not because I want to press in any pattern, but I find that that is the easiest to absorb material off with. And I want to get in there straight away, and I want to stipple this. And I want to stipple first, even though you might see a little bit of your pattern, which is fine. I'm doing it real time so you guys can see precisely how long it takes. And I use precisely 0 paintbrushes. Switch your cloth around, or your towel around, so that you get different levels of absorption. Okay, so that's the the unwashed but painted. That is the unpainted pink, and then that is the dark washed side. Now, you've put it on, you have stippled it, and now what you're gonna do is you're gonna go in with your cloth, your towel. Now you can use an actual cloth for this, or you can just use paper towel, it's fine. And you are going to rub all of the surface. Trying to hang on to this piece. I'm trying to get too much on my hands. If that's at all possible. Switch this over a little bit. And I'm taking all pattern out of this now. And you guys can see, so that's burnished away. That's not touched. That's burnished away. Minus that material there that just, when I set it down, I got it on there. So that's burnished away, and then this is untouched. So we'll get into this, and I'll do half of this so I can show you. So you can see kind of the not touched and then the touched. Okay. So now we have, you can still see the difference. It's definitely definitively darker. And then when I bring this up to the camera, I want you to pay attention to one thing in particular. So you can see that we pulled away almost no paint on the top surface. But where we did pull away paint was on the edge surfaces. So right here, you'll notice you got a dark pit, a dark pock mark. On the edges here, any of those divots end up being darker. You can see on the backside edge, you can see on the flat right there, you can see on the leading edge. So we did that front edge as well. You can see pits and the pocks. I rotate that around to this side, you can see where we pulled off that one piece right
where I hit my finger, right here. So you can see all of those areas ended up, and remember I told you, hey JD, and then again along that front edge. Remember I was saying you want to go in with an ink on those. Even if you're not doing the wash technique, you want to go in and you want to set that color dark. However, if you do it like this, the wash just sets that tone for you. Now what you're going to be able to do when you go in and do your damage and your rust and your chipping, you already have a pattern. The chip's already laid in for you in a really natural way. So now I can use that chipping to now accent that. So I can go in and push in a little bit of a gunmetal color. I can go in and add a little bit of a rust mark there. If I want to go in and add a little bit of a streaking grime or rust in there and have rust streaks coming from those, any of those points. And you can see from the edge, again, just playing with the natural light here, you can see how unique that look is already. You have that sort of tarnished, washed, worn looking metal. And we just did that basically from a simple watered wash and a base coat. We haven't done anything to make it look nearly as unique and definitive as this, but that's exactly what we're gonna do. We're gonna use, this was this. It's the identical paint look. And so whatever color tone you wanna go with, this is the undertone that sets the look for this. You know, whether I'm gonna add as much rust in or grime or what have you. Certainly this piece lends or almost begs to have some streaking coming down from the front, and it almost tells you that you have to have a darkened look on the inside, right? That vent that's pouring down from the side of the wall. So that's how we effectively turn, I don't know where my other foam piece is, like this. I think I had two once upon a time stacked up here somewhere. At this point I don't know where it is, but the two pieces of, or the two venting pieces that we have, you know, quickly transforming them from that blank or stark pink look into something rather unique and definitive like that, just with a couple easy steps. So yeah, so I'll basically keep punching away at that, although would love to know where I put that other foam piece. Fair enough, I'll find it. And yeah, and then we'll come back and we'll make this piece, we'll get this tied up to the same steps. We'll get the rack to the same steps. The rack's going to be a reddish color with a little bit more rust coming through. These are going to be a little bit more dark and grimy, more on the blackened side than, oh, here's the other one here, it's blackened out. This one is going to be a little bit more on the blackened side versus the wall panels here, which were a little bit more on the grimy side. So again, this is up atmospherically on the wall, so it's going to be taking in a little bit more of the elements. These are going to be obviously having some sort of exhaust coming out of them, so they'll be blackened, and then the rack itself will be a reddish tone, and so that's going to just kind of show that rust running off. And then when we get to actually doing the wall itself, I'm just going to end off here. Let me just jump into a different view, something a little bit more of an atmospheric shot, so you guys can see my messy workspace. There we go, and hopefully the mic got there. He is. So when we get all the pieces on the wall itself, that's when we're going to start tying in all the other elements. Well, maybe this rust streak's going to run down here a little bit. Maybe the glass that's going to be on here is going to be a little bit more grimy. So maybe there's going to be you know, some pooling or some streaming of some grime coming down from the window. Perhaps at one time they tried to clean it and some of the grime just sort of washed down here. We're going to put those vents down lower than you're going to be able to see, but of course they're going to have some grime around those. We'll have some of the boxes and things clustered up. We'll have the pipe right here. You know, obviously it's going to be blacked out and we'll get rid of that orange cap, but we'll have some grime and things running down the wall here as well. And we can play a little bit with the natural shadows. Obviously the door frame, I have one part of the frame left to do that pink portion there. Yeah, so we'll get all those things on there. We'll make it look good. Morning, Patrick. I guess it would be morning for you. checking from Belgium. Yeah, so that's effectively what we have going on. As I said, we're going to do a little bit more work on the bullet holes themselves. We're going to gray them out a little bit more, but perhaps we could have a few more, just maybe soot marks on the wall, not necessarily damage, because all these are actually physical bullet holes. They all physically go into the wall itself. That's a few other elements that we have to add. So stay tuned for all of that, folks. Like I said, if you're not a patron and you want to become one, it's easy, it's cheap. You can be one as low as $2. The $5 level gets you all the videos that ever were and ever will be. You can join the $15 level if you want to have actually one-on-one connects with me. I do them every month for anyone who's at that tier who needs it. It's just a consult. I talk to them about products, show them things, troubleshoot with them, spitball ideas, all of those fun things that you can do. You can check that out. Occasionally I have Patreon perks as well, so look for those. They'll come up via that. My wife right now is working on trying to get some TheTerrainStudio and Friday Night Fight stickers, just as an added bonus that we can give out to folks. Patreon doesn't allow giveaways, but on occasion, some patrons will end up with something special. It's not a giveaway, it's just something that magically ends its way into the mail and maybe ends up in your mailbox at some point. So we do that as well, but I do appreciate the viewership, the interaction that you guys have. Don't forget, every Tuesday I do a podcast related to Star Wars Legion, and then on Fridays we do a film gamed right here. We use a few more cameras and we get you a little bit more of a atmospheric shot of the table, but this is our backdrop that I've been working on to make that look a little bit spicier and fun for all you folks. So that is it for me. I'm going to jump back in my booth and then I will end off there. I'll meet you there in a second.
There we go, back in the booth. All right, guys. Well, thanks very much for tuning in for the 2 hours and 16 minutes that I prattled on about the wall. Hopefully, you got a better sense of what I'm working at. I know that all work is not glamorous. I cannot make the work any more entertaining than it is. You will often see the behind-the-scenes stuff, which is boring. The photos are great, but a lot of people want to know how you got there, or at least some steps to help them along the way. So if you're doing a build, let me know about it. I'd love to hear about other builds. I think maybe secretly I heard in the whispers of the Patreon TheTerrainStudio halls that a Lord of the Rings project is about to commence. So we'll be doing that. So if you're interested in greenery, of which I very much am, to give me a nice break from this stuff, we're going to shrink down the scale and we're going to get a little bit more organic with that build. So look for that. That'll be on the Patreon. We'll do a whole build log on that, probably a weekly vlog for that one, just because those are fun for the customers to also chronicle and follow along the journey. But the nice thing is sometimes they let me do that for you guys too. So we will have that for you upcoming. That'll be probably starting in September, to be quite honest, and probably take us through Christmas. So look for that. That's why I want to get this wall done so I can shift gears. It's very hard to be, at least for me, to have my mind creatively on two different things. Going from building broken windows to building a Shire is a bit of a leap. Prepared to do it, but I prefer to focus on one thing just because I can get the creative juices flowing in the same direction as opposed to springing leaks all over the place. So, all right, guys, that'll do it for me. Look for this one. I'll probably do another one next Sunday. If you guys think it would be worthwhile, let me know in here, comment on the Patreon and or the Discord, whichever you prefer. You can hit me up directly. You can find me. I'm just this guy right here at the bottom. I don't hide anywhere on the internet. That's where I go by pretty much everywhere, or the TheTerrainStudio, depending on what platform, but easy to find and easy to connect with. So I will catch you guys in the next video. I have a 3-year-old who is calling daddy because I'm at the limit of time, and I better go play whatever game is about to commence and probably watch some Blippi videos. So also not a sponsor, but thanks for watching, guys, and I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.